everybody, it's Joe Perrott, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group. Are you feeling stuck with your Gundog training? Trust me, you're not alone, and that's exactly why you need to be here. Every week, we're bringing you the best tips and hacks to make training your Gundog easy peasy. We'll keep it straightforward, no fuss, just actionable guidance that you can put straight to use. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Found It, Fetched It. This week is going to be a little bit different. I have, under force, agreed to interview me about my book, The Thoughtful Dog Trainer. I'm getting to see what it's like being in the hot seat, shall we say. So, Stu, what questions do you have lined up for me today?
I'm going to enjoy this. This being a podcast, the audience can't see Jo, but she's physically squirming, and you probably won't like this because Jo will sing anyone else's praises and compliment them to death. But if you try and give Jo Perrott a compliment, it's really quite a hard thing to do because the first thing she does is turn it round and tell you how wonderful you are. Now, what we wanted to do when we did the Ladies Working Dog Group Weekender back in June was pin her down because we had her there physically and actually do a chat with her about her book, because her book was launched onto the market and had a bit of publicity. Safe to say you didn't really go to town on it and make a big song and dance about it, did you, really?
No, I launched it and I just thought, okay, that's done now. And yeah, probably haven't done what I should have done with it.
Yeah. So what we thought we would do is have a chat, like I say, when we had the Weekender in Wales back in June, but we just ran out of time, didn't we? Because we had some amazing speakers there and we had some really interesting presentations. And to be honest, we just ran out of time on the last day. So I think Jo thought she'd probably got away with not having this chat about her book, but it absolutely deserves the recognition. Because to be honest, just writing a book has me in awe anyway. How someone can sit down and write a whole book just blows my mind. But apart from that, it is a flipping brilliant book. There's lots of books out there really about training, the physical aspects, the practical side of dog training, but very few, if any at all, to be honest, about the mindset of the dog handler. And it's such a huge element of the training. So to be honest, when you think about it, it's a wonder it hasn't had more articles and books written about it. But so The Thoughtful Dog Trainer by Joanne Perrott will start, and I'm going to go right back to the beginning actually, because a lot of people know your background, but some people won't know the background at all and why this book came to be in. My first question really is to take you back to the beginning. What was your introduction to working breeds, and when did you start to train your first dog?
My first introduction to the breed was my dad's dogs. We grew up in a small holding and he had terriers and he had lurchers. And my first pup when I was like 1 year old was a Labrador called Griff. So we always had dogs in our lives. That was, like I said, a given. Working dogs, as in taking a dog out on an estate myself, that was a little bit different because that didn't happen until my dad dragged me out onto an estate with his trialing dog in 2015.
And then did you just get the bug and want to do that yourself?
What it was, I think it was a case of, for some people who know my story and for those who don't, because I was suffering with PTSD from my brain tumor growing back, I was not leaving the house. So when I was leaving the house, I probably looked to a lot of people like there was nothing wrong. And we see this all the time now being talked about a lot more in disabilities and like neurodivergence. My mind was not the same as my physical appearance. So my physical appearance, I looked absolutely fine. And inside I was literally falling apart. So I could go out and I could functionally cope. People around me could and knew the signs of she is coping, she isn't coping. But then I would try to get back inside the house as quick as I could. And then my dad was just getting, my entire family, my husband, everybody, they were just getting more and more conscious of the things I was doing to isolate myself. So in my mind, my four walls of my home was a safe place. Even with my tumour, they were still safe. And not that there was any sort of external challenges in the outside world. It wasn't like my trauma had been caused by someone attacking me or by a person doing something to me. It'd been my mind anyway that sort of triggered it. But outside, it was all the stimuli and everything else would have me panicking on top of what I was dealing with inside. So I just couldn't cope. So when Dad said to me, come on, you're coming out on the stage beating, like my daughter was already picking up for Glenask, my dad was trialing, they were really into it, and I was like, well done, Charlotte, excellent, but I wasn't really interested. Even my husband had been out with a spaniel on an estate working dogs, and my husband was like, you would love it, and I was like, yeah, whatever, I'm busy, because we all do that, don't we, as women? We're always very busy. Yeah. But I just one day caved and he said, you are coming out with me tomorrow. And I went out on an estate in Brecon, and I had Grace, his trialing dog, who made me look far better than I was, because she knew exactly what to do with the beating line. She was a wonderful dog, always was a wonderful dog. And I literally got the bug, I think, for being outdoors with other people and not being scared. I was so watching her, listening to everyone, like not laughing along with people because I was still incredibly nervous, but I was so loving the whole process that my mind didn't have time to dwell on the things that I normally got to think about. For example, in a restaurant, you can sit and think about everything that's going on around you. When you're out in a beaten line and you're walking and you're physically exerting yourself and doing something new, all fears have to go somewhere else because your mind doesn't have time to think about everything. So for me, it was that. I fell in love with the bug of coming home physically and mentally exhausted in an incredibly nice way.
Yeah. And then did you work Grace for a while? Did you take her on, or did you then start training your own dog?
Because Grace was Dad's trialing dog, every time we got close back to Dad and she heard his whistle, she'd fog off and leave me. I knew it wasn't going to ever be a permanent solution because Dad's dog obsessed about him, like literally obsessed about him. So Dad, I don't actually know exactly how it happened, but Dad knew of a pup who somebody else had been to see. He was called, I can't think of his like full kennel name, but I think he was called like Cocker Mauriawn, which is Welsh, but it basically means like very large cocker. And when he came and I had him, he was the best pup. He was only 5 months old when I had him. But obviously he couldn't go beating, and we were in the middle of a season. So I carried him in a bag, and people thought I was mental because I was wandering around an estate with a dog in a bag. But I loved it because in my mind, he was still with me and I was still doing it. And like I was still in that situation where I was still around people and still doing stuff that I was enjoying, and I was enjoying training him in between. So whilst he couldn't do anything out on the estate, he was too tiny, what I could do is in between shoots was train him. So he would get me stuff out of the washing machine, like he'd get me socks and he'd do cool stuff, and I would show Dad all the time all these things. And I don't think Dad actually cared for what I was training him, but he did enjoy the fact that I was not inside the house all the time.
Yeah, exactly. It gave you a focus, and he'd have been happy with that you'd got that focus.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we'd always grown up around animals and being outdoors. So my dad could never understand that I wasn't outdoors. And like I'm sure he just genuinely couldn't understand it. And he certainly couldn't understand my PTSD. He didn't get it. As much as he was trying to be sympathetic, he didn't get it. So it didn't matter what I was doing. If it meant I was outdoors and I was talking to people, as far as he was concerned, it was job done. He would say to me, like, let's go here or let's go there. And he would talk to me about the dogs, and he would talk to me about trialing. We suddenly also had, which as he passed years, a few years later, what is incredibly special to me was the dogs also gave me years of having something to talk to with my dad, and having that thing where as an adult we built a different type of relationship. We built a friendship relationship where, yes, of course he was still my dad, but we had this common interest that we just yabbered about all the time. My mother would say to me and Dad, will you just shut up about the dogs? And we'd be like, no. And we would just talk about it constantly. And I think that was something that I'm sure if you could ask him, he held very dear. But for me, it was everything.
Yeah, really special. So how do you go from that point and just starting to work your own dog and getting back into the world to writing a whole book? Like what made you decide to write a book?
So Dad passed in 2019. So from having that first experience in 2015, in 2017, I had to have a second 6-hour operation on my brain. And I was held back a little bit again in the fact that I had to recover again. And it did, every time I've been through that operation, it's changed the person I've been coming out the other side. So again, I have to like refine myself again, which it sounds like interesting in one way, but it's also incredibly hard in another way to have to keep on not reinventing yourself, but actually working out who you are now you've been through this. It's the same like losing my dad or losing my brother. And for anyone who's gone through anything majorly life-changing, who you become is not who you were, and you cannot go back. So when Dad passed, I knew even from the minute he passed, even maybe from before, that I wanted to do something that, I don't know, was like a mark in time, a milestone of what we'd shared, because there is no guarantee for any of us. I have to potentially face the same operation next year or the year after. There is no guarantee that the Joe coming out of that will be the same Joe that's talking today. That's part of life and as we grow. But I wanted at this point to mark that. And also because my mind after my operations, and I think it's for many women who are like pre-menopausal or post-menopausal, we forget stuff all the time because life is busy and our minds are busy. And I wanted something to remember the stuff because it's very easy to forget. And in a book, not the stuff we'd shared, but the lessons he taught me and the things I'd taught myself, having them in a book meant that I could almost reread that book and remember everything I might have lost.
Yeah. When I look at the book, and I know because I remember when you sent the first iteration of it through for a proofreading, and then those of us that were proofreading hadn't got very far before you completely rewritten it and sent another one because you were so passionate about it and so hard on yourself writing it that you could tell that you wanted it to be the best it could be. What was the most difficult bit from your point of view about writing the book? How long did it take you? You touch on self-sabotage at one point in the book. Did that affect you when you wrote it?
God, yeah, like it probably stopped me a million times. Had I had to write the book completely on my own, as in no team, like the team who did the cover and helped me with getting it on Amazon and stuff, that team kept me going because that team gave me deadlines. So I knew that the cover had to be signed off by this date. I knew that this part had to be done by this date. Had I not had that accountability of that support team around me, I don't think it'd have even got here today. And certainly when it came to you guys for proofreading, up until that point, it was a dream and a passion in my head. So even though I'd written it was a physical book, it hadn't gone to anyone. No one had seen it. So I could have literally thrown it in the fire and nobody would have known any more about it, okay? But I just when I sent it to you guys, then it became very real because there was that accountability of people's opinions I genuinely cared about. And I knew that the people I'd sent it to loved me and would be honest with me. But I also wanted it to be something that you read and went, oh my God, this has helped me. Oh my God, this has helped other people. So when it got here, I was like, is this my best stuff? And I think what I'd written had been, up to that point, had been good stuff, but then it wasn't my best stuff. And I just sort of had to go back through it and rewrite it. And then once I'd done that, of course, it followed the same chapters and maybe subheadings and stuff, right? I just really went through and went, oh my God, let's go through this. And I had my daughters reading it and looking for spelling checks and typos and all those things that, like, I really just didn't want anybody ever finding them, as in, like, I wanted it to be something special when somebody read it. And then once we'd gone through that, and it got to the point where, like, it was ready to go out, the self-sabotage at that point was massive. Like, I can remember waking my husband and saying, what if somebody gives me a 1-star review? And he'd be like, what? And I'd be like, I just know somebody's going to give me a 1-star review. What if everyone gives me a 1-star review on Amazon? I was petrified. And the whole thing of putting this out on a global stage where people who do not know me from Adam they don't know me, they don't know anything about me, they don't know my story, they don't know my tone of voice, they don't know anything, could buy it and go, what a load of crap is this? And that petrified me. It really did.
Yeah, isn't it funny how when I was reading it, even the first time you wrote it, before you'd even changed it, it was amazing. And then when it came through and the speed at which you rewrote it, I can remember you sending a message saying, let's face it, I'm a beeping nightmare, but thank you for rereading it again, because it came through so quickly. But I think it had more of you in it. As you rewrote it, more of you and your voice came through. So that was, you could tell with that. But isn't it funny how you know this stuff, you know about self-sabotage, you know the advice to overcome that and what to do. And you talk in the book about being kind to yourself and the importance of being kind to yourself. That even when you've done that and put it down in paper, those demons can still come back and be sat there, and those voices keep coming back and saying, but it might be rubbish and someone might hate it, or and you know it's not true, because loads of people have said this is great. But isn't that, it just shows you how, and we do it all the time, lots of us, and after all, this is about your mindset when you're training a working dog. It's so easy for those voices to get louder. You're not doing it right. What if people think what you're doing is silly? Or it's also easy to not be kind to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And my husband always says to me, say, I don't know, I've got a deadline of next week. I will be like nearly on the deadline before I even start something sometimes. And he'll say to me, not enough pressure yet, and laugh at me. Because I am very much, my best work is always lastminute.com, because I think people work very differently. Like Charlotte, my one daughter, and we see this definitely with Claire Denier. I'll mention her now. Claire Denier, we can talk about a project next year, and the next day the work is done and it's in a folder waiting for us. And I'm like, oh my God, she's serious. I haven't even put it in the diary yet. And I'm always in awe of that. So some people are very much like that. It's all organized, it's all done, like as soon as they've had that conversation. Me, I'm very much, I need the pressure to be on for my brain to switch into it. And I think, like, when I started writing it, you talk about more my personality, but also more of my demons, it allowed me to, with that pressure of the final deadline looming, I was like, what has to be in this? And it made me think about all our ladies and all the people that we've dealt with. And you're quite right. The common themes I see, and nobody in our group fails, I would say. I think they get roadblocked, they get stuck, they get disheartened, and we are there to pick them back up. But all the objections, all the things they face are normally, I would say 90% of the time, self-made. And I think all of us, we might learn how to manage that, but we never escape that. Like, we cannot escape who we are. Like, I cannot escape the fact I am lastminute.com. I cannot escape from the fact that I will always be very critical. It's like on social media when I do lives. Like, I talk to our group all the time on lives and things, but if I take that live outside of that group, out of my invisible 4 walls of safety, I am terrified, but I have to keep pushing through it, because in order for all of us to be leaders to our community, and I do think when you're part of the LWDG team, you are a leader, we have to keep on saying, we feel it, but we do it anyway. We are scared with our dogs, but we do it anyway. We mess up with our dogs, but we fix it anyway and move on. And I think that's what our group loves, is that fact that we're vulnerable and we're honest and we're authentic. And those things, when you accept who you are, and I think this is what like the book boils down to, you are going to have all those things that are going to try and stop you from your dog journey. You have to just keep picking yourself up over them and not holding yourself in judgment for them. They are coming. All those feelings, regardless of whether you've had them yet, are coming. It's how you're going to step over them.
Yeah, and actually, as we're recording this podcast, that's quite timely, really, because we've just had 2 stories within the members group, 2 of our members this week that have sort of come out with really inspirational stories and videos about their journeys. With Vicky and with Lucy, have really overcome some really tricky stuff with their dogs, to the point that they just thought at times, this is never going to happen. I can't do this. Like, I'm never going to fix, for want of a better word, this dog, and it's not going to be what I imagined it should be in my head. But they've kept picking themselves up and they've kept at it, and they've got all the advice they could get, and they've watched the masterclasses and they've spoken to the group experts, and they've kept at it, and then it's come good. And those, for a lot of our members, even for me watching it this week, I was like, oh yeah, I can get there then with my youngest. I'll come good at some point if I just keep going. And again, that's one of the things that I remember from the book, was the keep pushing forward, because every dog and handler, every combination is unique. One size doesn't fit all. So what one dog may pick up really quickly and we think, God, they're a dream to train, another one really tests you. But I think from those hard times, that's where you learn the most.
Yeah, and I think what the book does, which I think hasn't been done before as far as I am aware, is we are used to thinking about our own minds and our own thoughts and our own feelings and our own emotions and all those good things or bad things, regardless of where you are in your life. We've got all that stuff going on in our heads. Very sparingly do we stop sometimes and think the dog has the same things going on in its head. It's not thinking, how am I paying the gas bill? But it is thinking, oh, am I chasing that rabbit over there? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? So it's got its own thoughts and feelings and its responses to those. But I think until we acknowledge that our ups, our downs, our self-wants are within us and also within our dogs, until we acknowledge that and say, oh, actually, we've got to build a relationship where we both say, okay, we'll just think the same way for a little bit. Until we can do that, I think that's where people get stuck. But when you also acknowledge then, as part of that, like sometimes with Ray passing, my brother, right now, I'm just not feeling in it. I'm really not feeling in it. But I've learned from the group that it's okay to say, I'm not feeling in it. So when I go out, I'm just going to like mooch about with my dog and I'm just gonna have fun. It doesn't all have to be perfect, and I don't have to be like flat out, and I don't have to be like so switched on to it all that there's no room for what I'm going through, because that is something I see. It's like people like, I'm so determined to do it perfectly, I'm going to forget everything else that's going on in my own life and focus on the dog. Well done on that, because the chances are you're not. So it's being able to say, oh, I'm just going to slow down a little bit with this dog. Or if the dog is in adolescence and it's just thinking, oh my God, I'm just mental, I want to do loads of stuff, going, okay, I'm just going to slow down with this dog because this dog is going through something right now. And that stuff, the dog recovering from injury, going through something right now. How do I accommodate their thoughts and feelings? And I'm not saying for 1 minute we have to be like, wrap the dog in cotton wool, never give the dog a row, because you know I'm not like that. But you've got to be aware of what's going on in our mind is just as important for both sides of the relationship.
Yeah, and I know one thing that we're really good at within the Ladies Working Dog Group is it's not a competition. You don't have to get to a certain point in a certain time. You don't have to drive yourself. We don't all have to compete to get to a certain place. Sometimes you do go backwards, or you go back a few steps, or even sometimes you think, I'm going to go right back to the beginning here and start again, because that'll give me a clean slate, and that's what I need to do to be able to move forward. And that's fine, because no one's going to look at you and think, what are you doing when you're doing that? And at the end of the day, it's, again, you touch on the book about, remember why we've got dogs. Don't forget about why you got a dog in the first place, and that their dogs in themselves have a healing power, and they give you an unconditional love. And to be honest, they're probably not that fussed if you're just going for a mooch and you're not training or you're not working from week to week with them, because just being with you is, dogs wake up every day, don't they, and go, woohoo, this is a great new day, how fantastic. And they just love being with us no matter what we're doing.
Yeah, like for me, if I boiled it down to what was the fundamental thing my relationship gave me with dogs, it was the dog gave me something to focus on and work on with the dog. I would work out how I was going to do something with Grace. Let's be honest, my first day on the estate, I didn't even know what a bird was. I didn't know what a partridge was. I knew what a pheasant was because I'd seen them before. I didn't know what hold the line was. I didn't know what breeks were. I certainly didn't know the difference between a 24 and a 12 bore, even though my father had shot all his life and we had guns in the house. Because I'd not been interested in all that. That's all I was interested in, is me and the dog. So when Dad passed, I tried going back out on the estate and I couldn't. Could I go back out now? Maybe. Do I want to go back out now? Not so much. Do I still love everything about rural sports? Absolutely. Do I still want to see it being around forever? Yes, because maybe one day I will go back out. Maybe it will be something that I can face and get through. But at the moment, for me, when I go out on the estate, that joy of working the dog is lost thinking about being there with my dad. So
Yeah.
it switched what it meant to me. So I don't want to lose that. So now I would rather take my dog and come to a training day with you ladies, or do something else. And I think that's okay. And it's okay for your relationship with your gun dog to be whatever you want it to be. Like, as long as you get in the basics in and your dog and you were safe, like, the rest doesn't matter. What matters is you are enjoying it. So if you enjoy hunting for dummies all day in long grass, crack on. And if you enjoy just retrieving, crack on. And if you enjoy going for big hikes up mountains, crack on. Like, why does it have to be anything other than what you want it to be? Because I think society is putting too many pressures in so many ways on everything we do, especially with everything going on at the moment with riots and all these things. Right now, my dogs are probably such a mind protector for me, because if you watch the TV and watch everything, you can get real sad real fast. It's very simple for me to pick up the dummy, go outside and say to Rex, come on, let's lob this round a bit, and just take my mind, or go into the group and see what everybody else is doing and take my mind off the external world. For me, my dogs give me a way of living in a microclimate which we've all created, that's very happy and very safe and very nice. And the book is about trying to give a bit of that microclimate to other people. I want them to read the book and literally go, oh my God, it doesn't matter that I'm not perfect. Oh my God, it doesn't matter that I don't want to do that bit. Oh my God, it doesn't matter that my dog's not going to be a field trial champion. I want somebody to walk away with that, because I can't be there for everyone. A, it's impossible. B, not everyone will want to be part of our membership. Men, bless, you can't come in. That's the end of it. But I want that book to be the bit where they go, actually, I might not be in there, but everything that they teach, all their ethos, all their values is in this. All the learning lessons, all the important stuff, the valuable stuff is in this. And will there be another book, because we are growing as a group. We are always growing, possibly. Like I've started a second book, which I think I'm slightly mad for, but I don't know where that's going yet. But I think if you can put something down on paper, like the book was only ever meant to be 40,000 words. That was like what they suggested. I wrote 56,000 and thought maybe I should stop now. This is not War and Peace. But if you're trying to ram all the good stuff in, and there's loads of good stuff, so where do you stop with that? But I wanted so much good stuff to be in there that didn't matter what page you turned to, what chapter, what sentence, that you would read a couple of sentences and go, it's not just me, I'm right.
Yeah, and that really comes through. Like I say, your voice comes through in the book, and it's a really good one for being able to digest it, then go back at different times and reread bits, because parts of the book will be applicable at different parts of your journey. But that was not going to be my last question. Do you have the writing bug now, or is there another book in you? You say you've already started one, so you've answered that. So clearly you have got a bit of the bug for it.
Yeah, I have got a bit of the bug for it, but also because the LWDG as a business is very special, right? Because yes, it's a membership, but that membership is an umbrella that allows us to do lots of other stuff underneath it. It's not just the LWDG that grows. Within it, we have the capability of growing other small businesses. We help each other to grow our businesses. And I think that in itself is such a wonderful, collaborative, kind thing. I love it. I love the fact, you know me, I say all the time, win. But the ability to like write a book or create a planner or create the quick plan pad, they are creative outlets for me, where it allows me to feed something that's in myself, which is I like to create and I like to help. So these extra products, they sit within the membership, but they're there for everyone because they are products that help other people. And that's important to me. With regards to the other book, though, I think it's more a case of, I don't know, it doesn't come from ego, because you know me, I fight anything that looks like ego all the time. I try to stay as humble as I can, as much as I can. It's really important to me. But there's something lovely to think my great grandchildren, if there are any, or great grandchildren, can go to the British Library, go to the inn and say, can I see this book? And they go, that's the book your great grandmother wrote. And that's mad in my eyes. And the fact that book then talks about my father, that gives them a glimpse of his life. But I mentioned my brother in the book only briefly. I never knew what was going to happen, but he's encapsulated in a little part of forever. And I don't know, I just think there's something nice about that. I like the thought that, like, I know in 2205, people are like, I wonder who Sue Lister and Claire Daniel and all these ladies who used to do this thing with their dogs are, because the world would probably have changed so much. They might not even be able to relate to what it is we do that we love.
Yeah, that's true. And it is a really great legacy. And like I say, I'm in awe about anyone that can write a book, but this is a really special book. So thank you, Jo, for sitting through this interview. I hope it wasn't too awful to be in the other chair, as it were, to be answering the questions for once. And to anyone who's listening, if you haven't yet got a copy, get one ordered. Jo Perrott, The Thoughtful Dog Trainer, is a really lovely read. So get yourself a copy. I'm sure you will go through it more than once and rely on it more than once in your dog training journey. Thank you very much, Jo.
Thank you, Sue, because you've probably been able to draw out of me there far more than most. And yeah, you're right. Actually, talking to you about it today has made me think perhaps I should do a little bit more PR about it. I should do a little bit more stuff. And only because you've ignited in me not the need to tell people about my book, but because we've talked about what it might leave for future generations. I think that's something that we should like harp on about, for want of a better word. I hope everybody's enjoyed. Thank you, Sue, for amazing questions, for making my eyes water a little bit and doing this for me, because even this podcast in itself is prosperity and legacy of what it is that we're all doing. To our listeners, I hope you've enjoyed. You can find the book on Amazon. It is available as a Kindle read or as a printable download in most countries across the globe. I hope you all enjoy it. If you have read it, please send us some comments. Please leave us reviews on Amazon, and we hope to speak to you all and see you all next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
That's it for today's episode. A massive thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to head over to the LWDG and sign up for our membership. Get access to expert-led training, a wonderfully supportive community, and the resources you need to become a confident and skilled Gundog trainer. Let's take this journey together, because no woman should have to train her Gundog alone. We'll see you all next week.